My mother's voice hit me through my car speakers before I even understood what I was seeing. "You're 28 years old, living in my basement like a parasite. Get out of my house today." The words came from my phone, propped in the cup holder, where my brother's girlfriend had tagged me in a live stream with the caption, "OMG, is this your family?" I was still 3 blocks away, sitting at a red light, watching my own eviction happen in real time, through a stranger's chair. My fingers went numb on the steering wheel. Not cold numb. The kind of numb that happens when your brain shuts down the parts of your body it doesn't need, so it can focus everything on survival on the screen. My mother stood in the front yard, holding her phone like a weapon, talking to her audience, while my brother Kyle laughed and kicked one of my trash bags so hard it rolled across the grass. My sister Brooke spun her camera around, giving her followers a full tour of my belongings, scattered across the lawn. Clothes spilling out of black plastic, my sketchbooks torn open, my laptop sitting on top of everything, while rain started spotting the keyboard. The light turned green. Someone honked behind me. I drove the last 3 blocks with my heart slamming against my ribs, like it was trying to escape before I got there. My name is Megan. I'm 28, and I'm a graphic designer. This is the story of how the family that threw me away ended up begging me to come back. When I pulled into the driveway, my mother didn't even look at me. She looked at the comments, scrolling up her screen. Someone across the street actually cheered. Brooke aimed her phone at my face, waiting for the breakdown that would rack up engagement. I didn't give it to her. I walked past all of them, with my jaw locked so tight, my teeth ached. I picked up what I could save with hands that wouldn't stop trembling, loaded it into my car, and drove off without saying a single word. In the rear-view mirror, I watched my mother lower her phone, looking almost disappointed that I hadn't performed. At that moment, they thought they'd finally gotten rid of the family burden. What they didn't know was that 6 months later, they'd be flooding my phone with over 70 desperate messages, begging me to talk to them. If you want to know how the basement parasite ended up holding everything they cared about in her hands, keep listening. 6 months before that night on the lawn, my life actually looked pretty normal from the outside. I had my own apartment, 20 minutes away, a beat-up Honda that rattled when the AC kicked on, and a full-time job as a graphic designer at a mid-sized ad agency in Dallas. Nothing glamorous, but it was mine. Then the economy tanked. Clients pulled campaigns, budgets disappeared. And one Friday afternoon, my manager called me into a conference room with that tight smile everyone posts about on LinkedIn. "It's the recession," she said, like that was supposed to soften it. 2 weeks later, I was doing the math on my savings and realizing it didn't stretch as far as I'd hoped. Moving back in with my mom was supposed to be temporary. We agreed I'd pay her $350 a month for the basement while I job hunted and picked up cafe shifts. On paper, reasonable. In real life, it felt like shrinking. My mother, Diane, loved telling people she'd taken her grown daughter back in, like she was rescuing a stray. At church, she'd sigh dramatically about how the economy really broke Emily. But when we were alone, different story. "You're almost 30, she'd mutter while slamming cabinet doors, living downstairs like a teenager who never grew up. Kyle would drop by for dinner, still in his greasy work shirt from the auto shop, and clap me on the shoulder. "How's the artist in residence doing? Any paying work yet? Or still just doodling?" Brooke floated around, filming everything for her followers, angling her camera so I was always half cut out of frame. Background noise in her curated life. Still, I told myself it was temporary. I applied for jobs every night, updating my portfolio, taking freelance gigs that paid insultingly low, just to keep my software subscriptions alive. Every time I handed my mom rent money, she'd flip through the bills like a landlord checking for counterfeits and remind me the electricity isn't free. Then one morning, the email came. A small tech startup in Austin loved my portfolio. They wanted me as a remote freelance designer, with the possibility of going full-time. The rate was more than I'd made at the cafe, and close to my old agency salary. My hands were literally shaking as I read the contract. I went upstairs and found my mom wiping down the kitchen counters. "Mom," I said, trying not to smile too hard. "I just landed a really good freelance job, steady work, decent pay. This could actually get me back on my feet." She didn't look up, just paused with the sponge in midair. "Freelance isn't a real job, Megan. Don't get too excited. People like you need stability." Then she went back to scrubbing like I'd told her the weather forecast. People like you. The words lodged in my chest and stayed there. I signed the contract anyway. I circled the start date on my calendar. I told myself that whatever she thought didn't matter. I had a plan. I had a way out. What I didn't know was that before I could take that step, she was already planning a very public performance to make sure everyone believed I was the problem. I didn't stop driving until the houses blurred into one long smear of Christmas lights and pickup trucks. I ended up at Jordan's apartment without remembering how I got there. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside without a word. When I finally managed to say, "My mom threw my stuff in the trash and live-streamed it," Jordan just stared at me. Then she said, "Sit down, start from the beginning." I handed her my phone and scrolled to the saved video someone had screen recorded before Brooke took it down. Jordan hit play. There was my mother, framed perfectly, eyes bright with righteous anger, calling me a parasite to a stream of laughing emojis. Kyle kicking my bag, Brooke giggling as she swung her camera around. The comment slid past at the bottom. "She looks lazy, to be honest, and my mom would never put up with that." It felt like being at my own funeral and hearing the eulogy from people who'd never met me. Jordan paused the video and zoomed in. "Wait, when did she find out about your new job?" In the video, my laptop bag was open, papers spilling out. On top of the pile was a printed copy of the freelance contract I'd left on my desk. The pages were crumpled like someone had read them and shoved them back. "Brooke was in the basement this morning," I said slowly, remembering how she'd wandered in asking to borrow a ring light. Jordan raised an eyebrow. "And you think she just borrowed equipment?" That's when it clicked. My mom hadn't snapped out of nowhere. She'd seen the rate on my contract, the start date, the words remote, retainer, option to go full-time, everything I'd been praying for. And instead of being relieved, she'd seen it as a threat to her story. The one where she was the struggling single mom, supporting her helpless adult daughter. She needed me to leave as the villain, I said quietly, not as the daughter who finally got back on her feet. Jordan disappeared into her bedroom and came back holding a faded folder. She'd kept a box of my important papers since college, back when I needed a safe place for things I didn't want my mom going through. "Do you remember this?" It was from 4 years ago after my grandfather died. The old investor who used to take me on long drives to look at houses and explain why some neighborhoods were gold mines, while others were money pits. He'd left an envelope with my name on it back then, sent through his lawyer. I'd been too grief-stricken to process it. My mom had waved it off, just boring estate stuff. "I'll handle it." I never pushed. Now, for the first time, I opened the folder properly. Inside was a copy of his will and a letter from his attorney, Miss Patterson. The letter spelled it out plainly. I was listed as partial owner on 3 assets: 45% of my mom's house, 55% of a rental apartment in Austin, 30% of Kyle's auto shop. There was even a note in his handwriting at the bottom. "Megan understands responsibility. This will help protect her if people ever stop seeing it." My mother had never mentioned any of it, not once in 4 years. I sat there with the paper trembling in my hands, replaying every time she'd complained about carrying me financially, while cashing rent checks from a property I technically owned more than half of. "You realize," Jordan said carefully, "if this is real, they've been pocketing your share the entire time." My first instinct was to storm over and shove the will in my mother's face, to drag her onto a live stream of my own and narrate every lie she'd ever told. But as my anger rose, Something colder settled underneath it. My grandfather hadn't left me this so I could scream and reenact her drama. He'd left it so I'd have leverage, choices, power. That night, I stayed on Jordan's couch, reading and rereading every page of that folder until the words blurred. I called Miss Patterson the next morning. She worked on contingency for inheritance disputes, so I wouldn't owe anything unless we recovered what was mine. Her voice was calm and steady, and it made everything feel suddenly very real. She confirmed the will was valid, filed, enforceable. She confirmed the rental income had been going into an account with my mother's name on it. She confirmed that loans taken out against the properties without my consent could be a serious problem for whoever signed them. By the time I hung up, my hands had stopped shaking. For 6 months in that basement, I'd let them call me a burden while sitting on assets my grandfather had specifically tied to my name. They wanted a powerless parasite they could kick around for sympathy points. What they actually had was a co-owner who knew exactly where the paperwork was buried. I wasn't going to lose my mind on camera. I was going to take my new job, quietly rebuild my life, and then use the very system my grandfather trusted to make sure every lie they told cost them something real. They thought throwing my things in the trash was the end of my story. They had no idea it was the beginning of theirs. 6 months later, you wouldn't have recognized the girl stuffing soggy sketchbooks into her car. I had a small third-floor apartment in Dallas with peeling white walls and a view of a parking lot, but it was mine. No one stomped over my head. No one yelled about the electric bill. No one called me a parasite. The startup kept their promise. Freelance turned into steady work, then retainer projects. Enough for rent, food, and breathing room. In all that time, I didn't block my family. I just didn't answer. My phone would buzz with group chat updates and random texts from my mom about church events, like nothing had happened. She never mentioned the trash bags, never asked where I was living. I let her pretend. I needed the silence more than I needed the apology. Meanwhile, Miss Patterson was pulling bank statements, rent records, loan documents. Every few weeks, we'd have a short call. She'd ask questions, I'd send screenshots, and then she'd say, "We'll move when you're ready, Megan. Not when they are." One Tuesday afternoon, she called and said, "I think it's time." She walked me through what she'd found, years of rental income from the Austin apartment that never reached me, loan paperwork with my mother's and Kyle's names, but not mine, a rough estimate of my missing share. "What happens when we do this?" I asked. "We don't destroy them," she said. "We just stop them from pretending you don't exist." Then she told me about the clause they never mentioned. Buried in the will was a condition. If any co-owners tried to conceal the will's existence or intentionally exclude me from decisions, their ownership percentage could be reduced by up to 15% per year at a judge's discretion. "They thought they were hiding you from the paperwork," she said. "All they really did was stack penalties against themselves." We sent formal letters laying everything out, my ownership percentages, the debts taken without my consent, the missing income, a request to negotiate before things went to court. For a few days, nothing. Then my phone lit up so fast it looked like it was glitching. The family group chat, Kyle, Brooke, my mom, a wave of messages stacked on top of each other until I had over 70 notifications in under an hour. What the hell is this lawyer crap? Call me now. Can we please talk about this like a family before you blow everything up? Megan, where are you living? Why didn't you come to us first? Answer me. My Aunt Linda dropped one line. Maybe we should have told her about the will when Dad passed. Then she immediately left the chat. 6 months ago, I was the one in the driveway with my life in pieces, while everyone pointed cameras. Now they were the ones spinning. I set my phone face down and let it buzz on the table. Made myself a sandwich, finished my client notes, let every call go to voicemail. When I finally listened to Kyle's message, he sounded less angry than afraid. "Look, Megan, Mom's freaking out. The bank is asking questions. Just tell us where you are so we can figure this out." You don't have to do this. But I did, because for years they'd been doing things behind my back and calling it family. The first sign things were getting ugly wasn't a lawyer letter. It was a TikTok. Brooke perfectly lit in her bedroom, mascara smudged just enough to look vulnerable. The caption, "When your own family member chooses money over blood." She talked about a sibling suing their mom over a house she never paid for, trying to take my brother's business away. Her followers flooded the comments, calling me greedy, ungrateful, a gold digger. Some found my Instagram from old tagged photos and started sending DMs. "You really taking your mom to court over rent money?" One said, "Get a job instead of chasing inheritance." Almost funny in a sick way how fast people pick a side when they only hear one version. A week after the letters went out, I thought the worst of the storm had passed. Then Kyle showed up. Later I learned he'd tracked my car's license plate through a friend at the DMV. Illegal, but that didn't stop him. I was leaving my building when he stepped away from a truck at the curb, bloodshot eyes, crumpled cigarette pack. "We need to talk," he said, blocking my path. "You can call my lawyer." He laughed once, sharp. "That lady's trying to turn you against your own family, Megan. Just sign a paper saying you don't want the shop or mom's house and this all goes away. The bank stops calling, we get back to normal. Normal." As if normal was my clothes in the trash, while he laughed for an audience. "I'm not signing away what Grandpa left me, because you took out loans without asking." His jaw tightened. "You think you understand business? Because he took you to look at a few houses? You're going to ruin everything he built." "He built it, Kyle. You and Mom just pretended I wasn't part of it." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "If you don't stop this, you're going to regret it. None of us are going to forgive you. Ever." The old me wanted to apologize, smooth things over, and instead, I pulled out my phone and held it where he could see the recording icon. "You done?" He cursed and got back in his truck. I sent the audio to Miss Patterson that night. She replied with one sentence, "Thank you, this helps." She walked me through what she'd found. My mother had used the Austin rental as collateral for a personal line of credit without my signature. Part went into Kyle's shop. The rest updated the house we co-owned. 4 years of rent deposited into my mother's account. 0 of it reaching me. "Your grandfather was smarter than they gave him credit for," she said. We scheduled mediation. Walking into that conference room felt like walking back into my childhood kitchen, but with fluorescent lights and stale coffee. My mom sat clutching a tissue, dressed for church. Kyle slumped in his chair, jaw tight. Brooke wore camera-ready makeup, glancing at her phone like she was late for a live stream. I sat beside Miss Patterson with my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Their lawyer started talking about family matters. Miss Patterson didn't blink. It became a public matter when my client was thrown out on her front lawn on camera. "We're here because that video isn't the only thing your clients chose to hide." My mother launched into her speech. Sacrifice, raising 3 kids alone, helping me when I had nowhere to go. She insisted the rent money had gone to household expenses, that the loan was temporary. Kyle said the shop would have gone under without that money. Brooke cried about stress in brand deals and how online hate goes both ways. They all agreed on one thing. I was overreacting. I listened, let them talk themselves in circles. Then Miss Patterson slid the will across the table, tapped the concealment clause, and calmly explained what 4 years of that would look like in front of a judge. For the first time, they went quiet. "What exactly would your client accept?" their lawyer asked. Every eye in the room hit my face. "I'm not here to ruin anybody's life," I said. "I'm here so you stop pretending mine doesn't matter. I want $18,000 paid back over time. A management company handling the rental so I don't have to trust you. My name officially attached to every property the way Grandpa intended. And a public apology." My mom flinched. "We'll apologize privately, family to family." I thought about the video, the neighbors watching, the comments calling me lazy. "You already did the public part," I said. "You just did it to me." The negotiation dragged for hours. Every time they pushed, Miss Patterson reminded them what court would look like, how a judge might view 4 years of hidden income, how that 15% penalty could erase more than this agreement ever would. At one point, Kyle snapped, "You're choosing money over your own mother." I looked him in the eye. No, I'm choosing not to let my mother steal from me and call it love. In the end, exhaustion and fear did what morality never had. They signed $18,000 in installments, my rightful share of future rental income, a third-party company managing the Austin property, and a public statement acknowledging they'd withheld information about the will and that their claims about me living off them were not accurate. They hated that last part. You could see it in every tight muscle of my mom's jaw. Within 2 months, Kyle's shop closed. The bank had frozen the line of credit tied to the rental. Brooke posted a tearful video about needing a break from social media. A small clothing brand cut ties after someone emailed them a compilation of her posts about me. My mom sold her car to make the first payment on the $18,000. I didn't dance on their ruins. I didn't send smug texts. I watched it all from my own kitchen table, working on projects they didn't know about, paying bills they no longer controlled. They wanted the internet to see me as dead weight. Now the internet saw something else. A mother who humiliated her daughter on camera and got caught hiding an inheritance she was never entitled to keep. These days, my life looks boring from the outside. And honestly, that's exactly how I like it. I wake up in that one-bedroom apartment that smells like coffee and printer ink instead of basement carpet. There's a desk by the window where my laptop waits, a corkboard covered in client notes, a plant I haven't killed yet. Some mornings I catch my reflection and almost don't recognize the woman staring back. She doesn't flinch when her phone buzzes, doesn't brace for someone yelling her name. She just lives. The fallout didn't fix who they are. Kyle texted asking for budgeting advice after the shop closed. Old me would have dropped everything. This version replied with 3 practical lines and didn't apologize when I didn't answer his follow-up. Brooke tried DMing from a backup account saying she missed me. I left it on read. My mom sent a handwritten letter, pages of tight script explaining how stressed she'd been, how scared of losing the house, how she hoped I'd forgive her someday, come home for Thanksgiving, once things calmed down. I folded the letter and put it in a box with my grandfather's will. Forgiveness doesn't have to look like going back to the version of family that broke me. One night, I found an old voicemail from my grandfather still saved on my phone. His voice came through warm and steady. "Hey kiddo, just wanted to say I'm proud of you. I know things feel heavy sometimes, but you see details other people pretend aren't there. That's gonna protect you one day." I sat on the floor and laughed once, a little choked. He had no idea how right he was. For a long time, I thought revenge meant making them feel as small as they made me feel. Fantasized about some dramatic clapback. In the end, revenge looked different. It looked like truth instead of screaming, boundaries instead of begging, making sure their lies cost them money, reputation, and comfort, while I built something quieter, but stronger. I won't pretend it didn't feel satisfying to see my mom's apology post. To hear Brooke lost brand deals. To know Kyle couldn't keep playing boss with money that was never his. But the part that stays with me isn't their punishment. It's that my chest doesn't tighten anymore when I hear the word family. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to steal from you, to rewrite your story, to turn your pain into content. Respect does. Accountability does. Love does. If you've ever been the problem child just because you refuse to stay quiet, I hope this reminds you you're allowed to protect yourself, even from the people who raised you. And if your family ever made you feel like dead weight, maybe one day you'll stand in a place that's yours, paid for with your own work, and realize they were wrong about you the entire time. When that day comes, choose your future over their version of your past. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.